Laughter echoed through the great chamber of the Galactic Sovereignty Council, and Admiral Priya Sharma stood perfectly still while it washed over her. Point 12 species ruled this galaxy. Their representatives sat in a curved row of elevated seats, looking down at the human delegation like adults watching children play pretend. The Sorath Fleet Marshal, a massive reptilian creature named Tyrus, had just finished calling Earth's application for membership adorable. Perhaps, Tyrus continued, his forked tongue flicking with amusement, we should give them a patrol route. Something safe. The fringe territories, maybe. More laughter. Even the insectoid High Arbiter Vaughn, who led the council, allowed himself a clicking sound that passed for humor among his kind. Priya did not laugh. She had commanded warships through 3 conflicts on Earth. She had buried friends. She had made decisions that still woke her at night. And now she stood in a room full of beings who had never struggled for anything, mocking her species for being young. Ambassador Delara Okonkwo touched her arm gently. The older woman had spent 40 years in diplomacy, and her eyes carried a warning. Do not react. Priya understood. This was a test, just not the kind they announced. The fringe territories, Vaughn said, his clicking laughter fading. An interesting suggestion, Fleet Marshal. Perhaps that would serve as an appropriate trial for our newest applicants. The fringe was a dead zone. Abandoned colonies, empty systems, asteroid fields that led nowhere. Every species represented here had given up on it centuries ago. Sending humans there was not an opportunity. It was an insult designed to fail. We accept, Priya said. The chamber went quiet. Delara's grip on her arm tightened. Vaughn leaned forward, his compound eyes studying her. You understand what we are offering? Old vessels, minimal support, a territory that produces nothing of value. I understand perfectly. Tyrus snorted. Brave words. Let us see if your actions match them, little mammal. 3 weeks later, Priya stood in a docking bay on Meridian Station, staring at the ships the Council had provided. 12 patrol vessels, each one older than human spaceflight itself. The paint was faded. The hull showed centuries of patches and repairs. Several had weapons systems so outdated that Priya's engineers had to search historical databases to understand them. They are laughing at us, Delara said quietly, standing beside her. Every species on this station is watching to see how we react. Let them watch. Priya, these ships are garbage. They expect us to fail. I know. Priya turned to face her old friend. That is exactly why we will not. Chief Engineer Rosa Medina was already aboard the lead vessel, running diagnostics. She was a small woman with gray streaks in her black hair and hands that had built engines on 3 continents before humans ever reached space. When Priya found her in the engine room, Rosa was elbow-deep in a power coupling that looked like it belonged in a museum. Report, Priya said. Rosa pulled her arm free and wiped grease on her uniform. These ships are 400 years old by galactic standards. The technology is ancient. The systems are inefficient. She paused, and a small smile crossed her face. But they work, and I can make them work better. How long? Give me the trip to the fringe. By the time we arrive, these old girls will run smoother than anything in the Sovereignty Fleet. Lieutenant Commander Yusuf Diallo found Priya in the observation deck as the fleet prepared to depart. He was her tactical officer, a tall man from Senegal who had served with her for 15 years. He knew her well enough to see the tension in her shoulders. The council assigned us an observer, he said. A watcher named Silen. Small amphibian species. She is supposed to document our failure. Document our failure, Priya repeated. That is her actual assignment. That is what she told me, Admiral. Apparently, the council wants evidence of human incompetence for their records. Priya laughed. It was not a happy sound. Then we had better give her something worth watching. The fleet departed Meridian Station to scattered applause from the few species who bothered to notice. Most did not. Humans were a curiosity, nothing more. A primitive species given primitive ships to patrol a primitive territory. No one expected to hear from them again. As the fringe territories grew closer on their sensors, Yusuf approached Priya with a puzzled expression. Admiral, I am detecting something strange. The long-range sensors are picking up a repeating signal from beyond mapped space. What kind of signal? Unknown. The Council's records indicate they have been detecting it for centuries. They classified it as background noise. Priya studied the readings. The signal was faint but undeniably artificial. Something out there was broadcasting, and the most advanced civilization in the galaxy had ignored it for hundreds of years. "Keep monitoring," she said, "and do not mention this to our observer." Not yet. The fringe waited ahead, empty and forgotten. But Priya Sharma had learned something important during her years of command. The galaxy's greatest powers had grown comfortable. They had stopped looking at things that did not fit their expectations. Humans had never had that luxury, and that, she suspected, was about to matter very much. The first thing Priya noticed about the fringe territories was the silence. No patrol ships, no communication beacons, no signs that anyone had cared about this region in living memory. The second thing she noticed was that the silence was a lie. "Admiral," Yusuf said from his station on the bridge, "I am detecting life signs on the fourth planet of this system. Thousands of them." Priya leaned forward in her command chair. "The Council records say these systems are abandoned." "The Council records are wrong. They found the settlement on a rocky moon called Dust. It was not a city. It was barely a town. Structures made from salvaged ship hulls dotted the gray surface, connected by tunnels to protect against the thin atmosphere." And when Priya's shuttle landed, she found herself surrounded by faces she did not expect. They were not human. They were not any of the 12 ruling species. They were something else entirely. Dozens of different species, all mixed together, all watching the human arrivals with expressions that mixed fear and desperate hope. The tall being with 4 arms and skin like cracked stone stepped forward. His name, Priya learned, was Goral. He had been living on Dust for 60 years. "You are from the sovereignty?" he asked. "We are from Earth. We have been assigned to patrol these territories." Goral's stone face shifted into something that might have been a bitter smile. "Assigned? Yes. That is what they told the last patrol as well. 70 years ago. They stayed for 1 month and never returned." Priya looked at the crowd around her. Children hid behind their parents. Elderly beings watched with tired eyes. These were not colonists. These were survivors. "Who are you?" she asked. "We are the remnant," Goral said. "The species the sovereignty decided were not worth saving." The story came out over the following days. Wars, plagues, economic collapses. Every crisis produced refugees, and every time, the 12 ruling species made cold calculations. Some populations were worth relocating. Some were not. The ones who were not found their way here, to the fringe, where the sovereignty did not have to think about them. Silen, the council observer, watched everything with her large amphibian eyes. She recorded every conversation, every interaction. She was supposed to be documenting human failure. Instead, she found herself documenting something she had never seen before. "You are feeding them," she said to Priya on the 3rd day. "Your ships have limited supplies. You are giving them to strangers. They are hungry. That is not efficient." Priya turned to face the small creature. "Efficiency is not the only thing that matters." Silen blinked slowly. "I do not understand." "I know. That is the problem." Chief Engineer Rosa worked miracles in those first weeks. The old ships had technology the sovereignty had abandoned long ago, but Rosa saw something the galactic powers had missed. Old did not mean useless. Old meant different. She began upgrading the vessels using principles from human engineering, combining galactic technology with Earth's history of making things work with limited resources. Yusuf trained the remnant volunteers who wanted to help. Goral brought him the strongest and most capable of his people, beings who had spent their whole lives surviving in conditions the sovereignty considered impossible. They learned fast. They learned well. And they learned with a loyalty that came from being seen as people instead of statistics. The mysterious signal from beyond mapped space grew stronger. Rosa analyzed it and confirmed what Priya suspected. It was not natural. Something was out there, and it was getting closer. Then the scout ship arrived. It came out of deep space trailing smoke and fire, its hull torn open in a dozen places. Priya's fleet managed to catch it before it crashed into Dust's surface. Inside, they found 3 remnant scouts barely alive. One of them, a female of a species Priya did not recognize, gripped her arm with surprising strength. "They are coming," she whispered. "We call them the Scourge. They have been raiding our outer settlements for decades. But this time," she coughed, and blood spattered her lips. "This time it is not a raid. We saw their fleet. Hundreds of ships. Thousands. They are coming for everything." The footage the scouts had captured was terrifying. Massive vessels of organic and mechanical design, moving through space like a swarm of predators. They did not match any species in the Sovereignty database. They came from beyond mapped space, from wherever that mysterious signal originated, and they were heading straight for Sovereignty territory. The fringe was directly in their path. Silen transmitted her findings to the Council immediately. For 3 days, there was no response. When the reply finally came, it was a single line. Evidence inconclusive. Stand by for further instructions. They do not believe us, Silen said, her voice hollow with disbelief. I sent them proof, and they do not believe us. Priya watched the footage again. The Scourge fleet was still far away, but it was moving fast. They had weeks at most. Then we will have to make them believe, she said. Yusuf, prepare the fleet. Rosa, I need those weapons ready. Goral, how many of your volunteers can fight? The stone-skinned leader straightened. All of them, Admiral. Every single one. The trial model had been designed to fail. No one had considered what might happen if it succeeded instead. They were about to find out. Commander Asha Patel had volunteered for the mission knowing she might not return. She was a small woman with steady hands and a voice that never wavered, and she had served under Admiral Sharma for 8 years. When Priya needed someone to carry proof of the Scourge threat to the Council, Asha stepped forward without hesitation. The journey to Meridian Station took 6 days. 6 days of watching the footage on repeat, memorizing every detail, preparing arguments for beings who did not want to listen. Ambassador Delara Okonkwo met her at the docking bay. The older woman's face was grim. They are already dismissing it, Delara said. Tyrus has been telling everyone the footage is fabricated. He says humans are desperate for attention. Fabricated. Asha's jaw tightened. 3 of my people died getting that footage. I know, but dying does not make something true in the eyes of the Council. The chamber was fuller than usual when Asha presented her evidence. Word had spread about the human claims, and representatives from every ruling species had come to watch. Most wore expressions of bored amusement. A few looked genuinely curious. None looked worried. Fleet Marshal Tyrus interrupted before Asha finished her first sentence. This is waste of the Council's time, the Sorith declared. Humans have been in the fringe for 2 months, and already they invent threats to justify their existence. There is no scourge. There is no invasion. There is only a primitive species desperate to seem important. I have footage, Asha said, keeping her voice calm. I have sensor data. I have the testimony of survivors who have been fighting these creatures for decades. Survivors. Tyrus made the word sound like a joke. You mean the remnant? The species we abandoned because they were too weak to matter? Those survivors. High Arbiter Vaughn raised one of his segmented limbs for silence. Commander Patel, show us your evidence. The footage played on the massive display screen that dominated the chamber. Scourge vessels, hundreds of them, moving through space with terrible purpose. The organic hulls that seemed to breathe. The weapons that tore through ships like paper. When it ended, the chamber was quiet. Impressive fabrication, Tyrus said finally. Human special effects have apparently improved. This is not fabrication, Asha said. This is happening right now, and if you do not act, it will happen here. Vaughn studied her with his compound eyes. For a moment, Asha thought she saw something like uncertainty in his ancient face. Then it passed. The evidence is inconclusive, the High Arbiter declared. Earth's fleet will stand down and await further instructions. This council session is adjourned. Asha stood in shock as the representatives filed out. Some laughed. Some shook their heads at human foolishness. None of them understood what was coming. Back in the fringe, Priya received the news with cold fury. Stand down, she repeated. They want us to stand down. The council believes we fabricated the evidence, Silen said quietly. The small observer had changed in the weeks since arriving. She no longer watched humans like specimens. She watched them like allies. They cannot admit the threat is real. It would mean admitting they abandoned the fringe to die. Then we will prove it is real, Priya said. Yusuf, what is the status of the Scourge Vanguard? 3 vessels have separated from the main fleet. They will reach our position in 18 hours. 3 vessels against 12 ancient ships and a handful of remnant volunteers. The math was not good, but Priya had never been someone who let math decide her fate. Battle stations, she ordered. All ships. The engagement lasted 4 hours. The Scourge vessels were massive, their weapons powerful beyond anything human technology could match. Priya lost 2 ships in the first exchange. 63 crew members gone in seconds, but Rose's modifications held. The old ships were tougher than they looked, and their outdated weapon systems did something unexpected. They worked. The Scourge are not adapting to our fire, Yusuf reported, surprise in his voice. Their shields should be adjusting, but they are not. Our weapons are too old, Rosa said over the comm. Their systems have never encountered technology this primitive. They do not know how to counter it. For 100 years of obsolescence had become an advantage. Priya pressed the attack. Her remaining ships swarmed the smallest Scourge vessel, pouring fire into its hull until something vital ruptured. The explosion lit up the darkness of space. The other 2 Scourge vessels retreated, rejoining the main fleet. They had underestimated the humans. They would not make that mistake again. In the aftermath, Rose's teams recovered fragments of Scourge technology. What they found made Rose's face go pale. Admiral, you need to see this. The biological components were unmistakable. The Scourge did not just kill their enemies. They consumed them. Their ships were partially organic, grown from the genetic material of countless species. Their weapons absorbed energy and matter, converting defeated civilizations into fuel for further conquest. They have been doing this for thousands of years, Rosa said. Maybe longer. And they are heading for the largest concentration of intelligent life they have ever detected. The sovereignty. Trillions of beings across 12 species. The greatest feast in galactic history. Silen made her decision that night. She transmitted everything. The battle footage, Rose's analysis, the truth about what was coming. She sent it not to the Council, but to every independent news network in sovereignty space. By morning, the footage was everywhere. Citizens across the galaxy watched humans fight and die against creatures from their worst nightmares. They watched the Council dismiss the evidence. They watched and understood. The panic spread faster than any fleet could travel, and in the depths of space, the Scourge changed course. The fringe no longer mattered to them. They had detected the response to Silen's broadcast, Meridian Station. The heart of galactic civilization, they were going straight for the head. Fleet Marshal Tyrus had spent his entire career believing the sovereignty was invincible. 300 ships under his command. The finest technology in the galaxy. Crews trained for generations in the art of war. The Scourge destroyed half of them in the first hour. He watched from his flagship as vessel after vessel erupted into flame. The sovereignty weapons were precise, powerful, and completely useless. Every shot that hit a Scourge ship seemed to make them stronger. Their hulls adapted, shifted, became immune to whatever had struck them moments before. They are learning our weapons, his tactical officer screamed. Every frequency, every energy signature. They absorb it and counter it within seconds. Tyrus gripped his command chair as another explosion rocked the ship. How was this possible? The sovereignty had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had conquered every threat, absorbed every rival, built the greatest civilization in known space. And it was dying around him. The final blow came without warning. A Scourge vessel, larger than anything Tyrus had ever seen, focused its main weapon on his flagship. The beam cut through shields, armor, and hull like they were made of paper. Tyrus found himself floating in space, sealed in an escape pod, watching the remains of his ship tumble into darkness. Around him, the debris of the sovereignty's grand fleet formed a graveyard that stretched for thousands of kilometers. Then a light appeared. A ship, small and battered and impossibly old, moving through the wreckage with purpose. It matched velocity with his pod and pulled him aboard that he woke in a medical bay that smelled of antiseptic and human sweat. Admiral Priya Sharma stood over him, her face unreadable. Welcome back, Fleet Marshal. Tyrus tried to sit up and failed. His body ached in places he did not know could ache. My fleet, gone. A few hundred survivors. We picked up as many as we could. How? The question covered everything. How had the Scourge defeated them so easily? How had humans survived when the sovereignty's best had failed? How had everything gone so wrong? Priya pulled up a display showing Rose's analysis. Your weapons are standardized. Every ship in your fleet uses the same frequencies, the same energy signatures, the same firing patterns. The Scourge have been preparing for this war for thousands of years. They have encountered standardized technology before. They know exactly how to counter it. And your weapons? Obsolete. 400 years out of date. The Scourge have never seen anything like them because your own people stopped using them so long ago. Priya's smile held no warmth. The ships you gave us as a joke are the only ones that can hurt them. The irony was not lost on Tyrus. He had mocked humans for their primitive vessels. Now those vessels were the last hope of the galaxy. The communication came 3 hours later. High Arbiter Vaughn's face appeared on the display, and for the first time in his long life, the ancient insectoid looked afraid. Admiral Sharma, on behalf of the Galactic Sovereignty Council, I am formally requesting Earth's assistance in the defense of Meridian Station. Priya did not respond immediately. She let the silence stretch until Vaughn shifted uncomfortably. You denied our evidence, she said finally. You told us to stand down. You called my people liars. I was wrong. The words seemed to cause Vaughn physical pain. The Council was wrong. We offer our complete apology and full recognition of Earth as an equal member of the sovereignty. The sovereignty is finished, High Arbiter. Your fleet is destroyed. Your authority has collapsed. What exactly are you offering me? Vaughn's mandibles clicked in distress. What do you want? Command. Full authority over all remaining military forces. Equal status for Earth and for the remnant species you abandoned. And when this is over, a new government. One that does not throw away the lives it finds inconvenient. The High Arbiter was silent for a long moment. Then he bowed his head. Agreed. All of it. The War Council assembled on Priya's flagship. Tyrus attended, still recovering from his injuries. Goral represented the remnant forces, over 2,000 volunteers who had trained for this moment. Rosa presented her weapons modifications. Yusuf laid out tactical assessments. We cannot match them ship for ship, Yusuf said. But we do not need to. Rosa has developed a way to randomize our weapon signatures. Every shot will be different. The Scourge cannot adapt to chaos. We are also downgrading sovereignty weapons, Rosa added. Removing the standardization, introducing unpredictability. It will reduce efficiency by 40%, but it will make them effective against Scourge adaptation. Goral spoke next. My people are ready. We have been surviving against impossible odds our entire lives. This is just one more fight. Tyrus listened to it all with growing amazement. Humans had been in space for barely a century. The remnant had been abandoned and forgotten. Together, they had built something the sovereignty's 10,000 years of superiority had never achieved at a force that could actually win. There is one more thing, Priya said. She pulled up a display of the Scourge fleet heading for Meridian Station. We are not going to defend the station. Everyone stared at her. We are going to let them take it. And when they do, we are going to give them a gift they will never forget. The evacuation of Meridian Station took 72 hours. 2 million beings fled the greatest symbol of galactic civilization, cramming into transport ships, escape pods, anything that could fly. They left behind empty corridors, abandoned homes, and 10,000 years of history. They also left behind something else. The upload is complete, Rosa reported from her engineering station. The virus is embedded in every database on the station. When the Scourge try to absorb the information, they will get more than they bargained for. Priya watched the Scourge fleet approach on her tactical display. Hundreds of vessels, each one a nightmare of organic and mechanical fusion. They moved with terrible patience, knowing their prey could not escape. Explain it to me again, Tyrus said. He had insisted on joining the command crew, despite his injuries. Pride, perhaps, or guilt. Priya did not care which, as long as he followed orders. The Scourge do not just destroy, Rosa said. They consume. Technology, knowledge, genetic material. Everything they encounter becomes part of them. That is how they adapt so quickly. They absorb what they need and discard the rest. So you poison the knowledge. I introduced chaos. Human chaos theory, mathematical patterns that contradict themselves, information that becomes more confusing the more you try to understand it. When the Scourge absorb Meridian's databases, their systems will not know how to process what they find. Tyrus stared at the small human engineer with something approaching respect. You are insane. I prefer creative. The Scourge fleet reached Meridian Station and stopped. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then tendrils of organic matter extended from the largest vessels, connecting to the station's hull like parasites latching onto prey. They are beginning absorption, Yusuf reported. Downloading everything. Priya watched the status indicators on her display. The virus was spreading through the Scourge network, carried by the very process they used to consume their enemies. It would take time to work. Until then, they had to wait. Admiral. Silen appeared beside her, recording equipment active. The small amphibian had become the war's unofficial historian. Whatever happens today, I want you to know that I was wrong about your species. We are not finished yet. No, but I have watched you for months now. I have seen how you fight, how you sacrifice, how you refuse to abandon even the weakest among you. I do not know if you will win, but I know that you deserve to. The first sign that the virus was working came 20 minutes later. A scourge vessel on the fleet's outer edge suddenly changed course, ramming into a neighboring ship. Both erupted in flame. Then another, and another. Their coordination is failing, Yusuf said, excitement breaking through his professional calm. They are attacking each other. The scourge fleet descended into chaos. Ships fired on allies. Formations collapsed. The organic components that gave them their adaptive strength were now receiving contradictory commands, tearing themselves apart, trying to process information that made no sense. All ships, Priya ordered. Attack. The combined fleet surged forward. Human vessels with their ancient, unpredictable weapons. Remnant ships crewed by beings who had nothing left to lose. Surviving sovereignty craft with Rose's modifications making every shot a surprise. They hit the scourge like a hammer striking glass. Priya commanded from the center of the battle, her voice steady as she directed strikes against the largest enemy vessels. Tyrus provided tactical advice, his knowledge of fleet warfare still valuable even if his own ships were gone. Goral led the remnant squadrons, his stone-faced calm inspiring his people to feats of courage that would become legend. The scourge tried to adapt, tried to counter, tried to do what they had always done. But they could not process the chaos. Every time they adjusted to one weapon frequency, it changed. Every time they predicted an attack pattern, it shifted. Yusuf, Priya said during a brief pause in the fighting. Take your strike team. Get aboard their command vessel. Plant the transmitter. Yusuf nodded once and ran for the shuttle bay. Priya watched him go, knowing she might never see him again. The boarding action took 40 minutes. 40 minutes of hell, fighting through corridors of living flesh, past defenses that screamed as they died. Yusuf lost half his team getting to the central chamber. He lost 3 more securing the room long enough to plant the device. Transmitter active, he gasped over the comm, get us out of here. Goral's personal ship dove through the chaos to extract the survivors. By the time they reached safety, the transmitter was broadcasting. It was not a bomb. It was not a weapon. It was a message, sent on every frequency the Scourge used to communicate with each other and with whatever home lay beyond mapped space. The message was simple. It contained coordinates. Every system the Scourge had visited, every world they had consumed, every hiding place they might retreat to, and one sentence, repeated in every language humanity had ever spoken, that we know where you live. Leave, or we are coming for you. The remaining Scourge vessels stopped fighting. They hung in space for a long moment, processing the message, understanding what it meant. Then they ran. The broken remains of their fleet fled toward the edge of mapped space, leaving behind the wreckage of their ambition and the bodies of their dead. They had come to consume a galaxy. They left having learned that some prey bites back. Priya watched them go, exhaustion finally catching up with her. Half her fleet was gone. Thousands of humans, remnant, and sovereignty citizens had died. Meridian Station was ruined, but they had won. Against all odds, against all expectations, they had won. What now? Tyrus asked quietly. Priya turned to face him. Now we rebuild. And we make sure this never happens again. 6 months after the Battle of Meridian, Priya Sharma walked through streets she barely recognized. The station had been rebuilt, but the old council chamber was gone. In its place stood something new. A circular building with no elevated seats, no hierarchy of species, no thrones for rulers who believed themselves superior. They called it the Assembly. Admiral Sharma. High Arbiter Vaughn approached her with a deference that still felt strange. The delegates are ready. I told you before, Vaughn. I am not interested in politics. And I told you that you have no choice. The galaxy believes in you. Your presence gives legitimacy to everything we are trying to build. Priya sighed. She had never wanted to be a symbol. She had wanted to command ships, protect her people, and maybe one day retire to somewhere quiet. The universe had other plans. The assembly chamber was crowded. Representatives from the 12 founding species sat beside delegates from the remnant populations. For the first time in galactic history, every voice had equal weight. The sovereignty was officially dissolved. The Galactic Compact had taken its place. Vaughn addressed the gathering first. His words were careful, chosen to heal wounds that had festered for generations. "I stand before you today to acknowledge crimes my government committed," he said. "We abandoned millions to die in the fringe. We dismissed warnings that could have saved billions. We believed our power made us wise, when it only made us blind." He turned to face Priya directly. "We gave humanity our oldest ships and our most hopeless assignment. We called it a trial, but we meant it as a joke. We expected them to fail and prove that younger species were not ready for responsibility." The chamber was silent. Instead, they saved us all. Ambassador Delara Okonkwo presented Earth's formal acceptance of founding membership in the Compact. General Kira Odia, who had led the remnant forces with such distinction, was appointed commander of the new combined military. When Priya declined the position herself, she recommended Kira without hesitation. "You could have ruled," Kira said afterward. "Every species in the galaxy would have followed you. That is exactly why I should not lead. Power should not belong to the person who won the last war. It should belong to the people who will prevent the next one." Silen's documentary premiered that evening. The small amphibian had edited thousands of hours of footage into something that changed how the galaxy saw itself. Humans fighting against impossible odds. Remnant volunteers dying for species that had abandoned them. Sovereignty officers learning humility in the face of destruction. The final sequence showed the message Yusuf had transmitted to the Scourge homeworld. "We know where you live. Leave, or we are coming for you." "Were you bluffing?" Silen had asked Priya during the interview. "Could you really have followed them home?" "I do not know," Priya had answered. "I hope I never have to find out." Rosa received the Galactic Science Medal for her weapons modifications. Her principles of deliberate chaos became the foundation of new defense technology across the Compact. Ships would never be standardized again. Predictability had nearly killed them all. Tyrus found Priya on the observation deck of her ship a week after the ceremony. The former fleet marshal moved slowly, his injuries still healing, but he carried himself with a dignity that had not been there before. "I owe you an apology," he said. "You owe me nothing. I owe you everything. My life, my honor, the survival of my species." He paused, struggling with words that did not come easily to a warrior. "I spent my whole life believing strength was the only thing that mattered. Power, dominance, the ability to crush anything that opposed you. And now I have seen what real strength looks like. It is not about crushing your enemies. It is about protecting the weak, lifting up the fallen, fighting for people you have never met because it is the right thing to do." Priya looked out at the stars. Somewhere beyond them, the Scourge were regrouping. The threat was not gone, only delayed. But for now, there was peace. "Why did you do it?" Tyrus asked. "When the council dismissed you, when everyone laughed at your ships and your assignment, why did you not give up?" "Because someone always fights," Priya said. "That is what being human means. When everyone else says something is impossible, someone stands up and does it anyway. Not for glory, not for power, just because it needs to be done." She turned to face him. "Earth has been through ice ages, plagues, wars against ourselves. We have faced extinction a dozen times and survived every single one. Giving up is not in our nature. It never was." Priya returned to Earth 3 days later. Her shuttle landed in a public spaceport, and she walked through crowds of people who had no idea who she was. Just another traveler returning home after a long journey. She visited a memorial garden outside the city. Simple stone markers bore the names of everyone who had died in the war. Human names, remnant names, even sovereignty names. They had all fought together in the end. Yusuf found her there, standing before the marker for the crew of her first ship lost in battle. "The council wants to name a station after you," he said. "Tell them no. I already did. They are going to do it anyway." Priya laughed. It was the first time she had laughed in months. "Then let them. I will never visit it." They stood together in silence, two soldiers who had seen too much death and somehow found their way home. "What do we do now?" Yusuf asked. Priya looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was still turning. New threats would emerge. New challenges would arise. And somewhere, somehow, humans would face them. "We live," she said. "We rebuild. We remember. And when the next impossible thing comes along, we do what we have always done. What is that? Priya smiled. We show up anyway. The galaxy had given humanity their oldest ships, their forgotten territory, their impossible mission. They called it a trial. They meant it as a joke. Humanity called it Tuesday.